Thank you so much, Finance Girls, for joining me today. I'm really excited to have you. We have spoken before, but I'm really keen to catch up and hear how you're doing. So how are you today?
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. Thanks for having me back. It was a couple of years ago, I think very early days in the journey for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, much has happened other than a pandemic.
Yeah. A pandemic, a newborn baby, which isn't a newborn anymore, and a whole bunch of businesses launched. So for those who don't know, I'm sitting today with the Finance Ghost, who is an absolute leading mind when it comes to investment. So the Ghost is an ex-financial investment banker who has made the leap into, I don't know what we could call a media ecosystem, which I see you as an investment influencer. So
Yeah,
how do you feel about that title?
I always get so scared of that word because I just think of Instagram accounts with Lamborghinis and yachts and forex trading. But yeah, I try and stay away from all of that for sure. But I guess at some point it has influenced the status, just hopefully for the right behavior.
Well, I suppose you know, just as soon as you have the Lamborghini and the yacht, then it'll be it'll be relevant. At the moment, you don't have that yet, I suppose.
No, I'm short on one Lamborghini and one yacht. But when that day comes, I think I'll keep it off the platform anyway.
Yeah. So you have this anonymous profile. Just explain to me why the ghost, why the anonymity.
I mean, it's a funny story because it basically started out as a joke. I was doing ghostwriting for people and I thought, oh, maybe there's an idea here of having this persona out there who kind of just makes everything accessible and fun. I must be honest, I looked at a business like Hippo Insurance and I thought, well, if they can make that much money from a hippo running around getting you an insurance quote, I can't believe that it's not possible to be, you know, more of like an avatar style business in finance, because the reality in finance is it's quite an egotistical environment, and most people in it, they want their face on TV. You know, it's the suit and the tie or the fancy dress or whatever the case may be, and the makeup and hair and all of these things. And I don't have to be any of that. I can just be this purple cartoon. And what's really cool with that is that people then just focus on the content. They don't go into it with any kind of preconception about my age, my gender, my race, you know, my hair, whatever it is. Whether we like it or not, people make, or they form a view on you the moment they see you. But when they see a purple ghost, they don't know what it is. It just completely diffuses it, and they actually listen or read instead and enjoy it. And of course, the name is really, you know, so ridiculous that it becomes memorable. The concept is utterly absurd that it becomes memorable. And what's really cool is in times to come, you know, it's a bit like the Stig. It's like, was it always the same guy driving? No. So is it always going to be me doing every piece of writing? Probably not.
Genius.
That's starting to change. So yeah,
Genius.
we'll see where it ends up. I think there's been a lot of luck along the way, and I'm glad it's worked out.
Yeah, I think luck, as long as coupled with a very high IQ and a lot of hard work. But I love the ghost because I think there is this juxtaposition in your brand and in your style between the weightiness of the content, but also the lightness that you bring to it. You make it so consumable for the every person, the lay person. So maybe just talk us quickly through your ecosystem before we jump into my questions that I have for you. Just tell us a little bit about all these different startups that you've got going.
Yeah, so I've got 4 startups, one of whom is a human. He's my favorite. And then I've got 3 startups that are businesses, and I try not to pick a favorite there. So one of them is Ghostmail, which is a daily mailer that gets opened every day now by over 45,000 people, around 80 to 90,000 unique people a week. So it's pretty big now. And basically what that does is it sort of runs through, you know, what were the biggest stories on the market from the prior day. I share really cool podcasts with people. You know, I've got a bunch of brand partners in there that bring other sort of thought leadership and market updates to the audience. So that is very much a financial media business, just a newsletter led strategy. So it's sort of bang up to date with where the world has gone, more by luck than design, to be honest with you. And I'm just glad that's kind of worked out. And it's for anyone who's like remotely interested in the market. Ultimately, I throw a bit of humor in there. I mean, I pretty much just write how I am as a person. I try not to take life or myself too seriously. And I think that comes through in the writing. And for those who are starting to move up the curve and want to understand more, the second startup is a business called Magic Markets, which is a podcast-led business, and that is with a partner of mine, Mohammed Nalla. So he had a bunch of very senior roles in financial institutions in South Africa. So he's got a wealth of experience. I may or may not, once upon a time in my life, have been his coffee fetcher in a certain bank somewhere. But we go back a long way, and the good news is we really work well together. Always tough to do business with friends ultimately, but we make it work. And basically, that is for someone who wants to take things a lot more seriously, really start to delve into investment concepts, because it gets super technical, right? And then for those who are very serious about it, there's a free podcast you can listen to. And for those who are very serious about it, there's a weekly premium subscription podcast called Magic Markets Premium. And there we do a report and podcast on a different global company every week. So this week we covered Meta, last week we did Netflix, not because we always do tech, it's just they've recently reported earnings, but rather because we focus on what is topical at the time. And the third startup is a business I'm very passionate about called Bizval. I've got 2 co-founders in that. And our dream is to give entrepreneurs access to valuations of their businesses that are obviously as accurate as possible and at the lowest cost possible. So in my investment banking days, I used to do lots of valuations and deals, and I took that expertise and used it in building the back end algorithm for this thing. And we've tried to make it as simple to use as a front end as possible, so that any entrepreneur, normally if you go to an audit firm, whatever the case is for a valuation, you're going to spend an absolute fortune, literally tens of thousands of rands. With this tool, our most expensive offering is 10,000 Rand for a concierge, which is our personal touch on it. If you do it online automatically, you're paying literally a couple of grand and you're getting a pretty accurate answer. So it's something we're very proud of. The whole ecosystem ultimately is about taking complicated financial matters and making them accessible to people. And you can kind of see that thread coming through on all those businesses.
Exactly. I was just about to comment on that. I think your 4 pillars for me are for entrepreneurs or people obviously looking to invest: simple, affordable, and accurate. So if I just go simple, affordable, and accurate, that is basically what sums you up, because even your premium podcast is really dirt cheap. It's like 99 Rand a month or something?
Yeah, it's way too cheap. So everyone wants us to make it more expensive. And at the end of the day, perhaps foolishly, we believe that one day we'll have 10,000 South Africans who are signed up for it, and then we won't be sad about getting 99 Rand from each one. Long way to go to get there. But, I spent my whole life trying not to get shut out for financial exclusion, and I'm not about to perpetuate that issue now. So, if someone can take $99 a month and get access to world-class research, then that's great. And it's just about showing that to people and getting enough of them to actually give it a go. I mean, that's literally less than a coffee a week. And you're getting
I know. What is it? $5? Something ridiculous.
Yeah. No, it is. It's incredibly
affordable.
There
is the price quality in my mind as a marketer. Price quality association was drummed into me when I studied, and I have learned, because I come, I think, from a similar background to you. I've always wanted my agency to be super affordable and to be able to literally help everybody who comes to me. And as I've been in business now, this is our 11th year in business. This month we're celebrating our 11th birthday.
Congrats.
And as I've been
That's exciting.
Thank you. I've started to make my prices a bit more expensive and to turn business away, which is where I've always wanted to be at, because at a certain point we just our ecosystem, our teams become too big. My staff are too expensive. I can't offer it at those rates anymore. But I do love that you are so affordable and accessible. I just don't know when when you have time for all of these things and yourself.
That's the problem. Look, the one thing that's interesting with Magic Markets is the amount of time that Mo and I currently spend on it. It's going to be exactly the same amount of time in 3 years' time when the subscription base is 10 times larger. It's not going to be a single second more time that we need to spend.
Yes.
So at the moment, we're investing heavily. I mean, if you work out what we're making versus the time we're spending, we're definitely subscale. But we do believe that long term, that won't be the case. And one day it'll be, you'll look at what we're making per hour of our time and it'll be hilariously good. So it's just about, I think when something can absolutely scale, you can get away with better pricing. But for sure, like in an agency business, as you grow, you need to start charging more. That's just how it is.
It's the worst business for scalability. Because, as you grow, you have to hire more. And as you become better, your staff become more expensive. And it's just like a really difficult thing to make profitable. But let's chat about exactly that topic. So you spend a lot of your time analyzing businesses, and in your view, give us some nuggets for the small, maybe mom and pop entrepreneur, the startup entrepreneur, the medium company, and maybe even your larger company. I don't know if you've got, like, what are your top tips for success? What do you notice in these companies that are doing well, like key things to take away?
So my favorite quote in the whole world is, greatness is a lot of small things done well. And I just love it because that's ultimately what it comes down to. It's really hard to wake up one day and go, wow, how do I get my business from where it is today to where I want it to be? There's no one initiative you can do that's going to make that happen. It requires excellence across everything you're doing. So the biggest tip is just whatever you're doing, you have to aspire for excellence in it. Every time you are posting something online, any engagement you have with a client, you just don't know who that person is or who is out there reading it or seeing it. I mean, if I think back to the big breaks that I got, you know, I one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given was from a good friend of mine. And he said to me, you have to be on Twitter, because I started this on Facebook. I'd never had a Twitter account in my life. And he said, the finance community is all on Twitter. That's where everyone is. You've got to be there. So I had no idea how Twitter works. Anyway, so I figured it out over time. But for a long time, you know, you're starting from zero. You're posting stuff. You're getting one like, occasionally a retweet, you know. And I'll never forget when I got my first retweet from Mark Hassenfuss from the Financial Mail. I'm sure he's, you know, he won't necessarily be listening, but, you know, if he is, big shout out there, because he gave me really my first break, I think, was that sort of retweet on a company I'd written about, and the share price moved considerably the next morning. And then he messaged me and he said, hey, you know, people clearly read it and liked it. You know, would you like to start writing for Investors Monthly? And that was kind of how it all really started. And I still write for Investors Monthly, and I always will for as long as he'll have me. But anyway, long story short is, it really is about getting the small stuff right and just making sure that you're doing everything, you know, you're always your best foot forward, because you just don't know who's watching. And the other tip is just build the most resilient revenue base you can. You know, you can never rest on your laurels and think to yourself, oh, this is working, it's all going to be okay. Sadly, it's sometimes not okay. And I think that's my success, and also my biggest failure, is having, you know, these three irons in the fire. Well, I mean, I can't say it's a failure because all three are working. It feels like a failure in terms of work-life balance. It is. It's a complete fail. But it's hugely successful in terms of three businesses that are achieving product market fit. And if all three of them carry on with this trajectory, then, you know, it is going to be one of those laughing in a Ferrari situations one day, like, you know, thinking of the times when I worked until, I can tell you now, it's a Thursday. The last 3 nights I've not been to bed before midnight, and I started each day at 7 a.m. It's not sustainable. Yeah. But, you know, you got to do what you got to do.
I have a thing. I've tried multiple businesses because I think as an entrepreneur, I'm a natural born, also an ideator. It's one of my giftings. And so it's easy for me to just come up with an idea, or I'll meet someone, they have a great idea, and I'm like, I want a business partner with you. And it's never worked. I do not have the energy you have or the commitment that you have to work that hard. So my thing that I always say to entrepreneurs is, do one thing and do it well. And you're doing 3 things and you are doing them exceptionally well, which is why you're not sleeping. But I get what you're doing. You're building something. You have a clear vision and your clear strategy, and you really are excellent. I mean, I don't know how you do it, but not one of your mailers has ever come out that's been substandard. You never have an off day. But I think it's your work ethic and your commitments and your spirit of excellence. So I have no doubt.
That's very kind. Sometimes I write those mailers at 11 p.m. at night after a very long day. So I'm glad that they. I'm glad you think that, because sometimes I read them and go, oh, this could have been better, but it's not midnight. Anyway, but it'll get there.
That's my thing. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think what keeps me sane is, yes, it's 3 separate businesses, but they're all in finance and they do all have some kind of common angle to them. So what I haven't done and what I will stay away from is, you know, if someone wants to open a restaurant, it's no. You know, I like stuff like that, like businesses that are just completely unrelated to what I'm currently doing. I just wouldn't get involved in at this point in time, because your headspace just becomes impossible. Like you just never switch off. I mean, I do never switch off as it is, but obviously I hope to one day get there. But when you just have too many different things going on, you've got no chance. I do also, according to my wife, at least have ADD, which I think is probably a superpower in this case, because otherwise I would just get bored anyway. I can't sit still. I just physically am not able to.
I have the same thing. I struggle to not fidget, and I struggle to rest. I literally, I go into this weird space. Like, what should I be doing? I don't have anything to do. What should I do? Okay, I'm in a garden. Okay, I'm going to clean. It's like, I still am striving to enter a place where I can just be. So yeah, I haven't achieved that yet, but that is my goal.
Yeah, that is a skill in and of itself. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, sometimes I'll force myself to just sit and like watch people or go to a restaurant alone because I'm an extrovert and it's terrible for me to be alone. And so I force myself to be out of my comfort zones.
That's
But
brilliant.
yeah, that doesn't come naturally.
Yeah, my switch off time is with the little one, and well, not that that's a switch off, but that's just my focus time. And I think compartmentalizing is key. It's like when when I'm doing this podcast with you, I can't be sitting here thinking, "Oh, I've got a webinar later with Easy Equities, and I need to be prepped for that, and I've got something I need to do for Bizval, and I've got something I need to do for that." You will lose your mind. You have to be present in whatever it is you're doing, and then be present in whatever the next thing is you're doing. Otherwise, you will not make it as an entrepreneur. You will not.
I do struggle with that. I do struggle with multitasking and giving multiple attention to multiple things at once, as opposed to just sitting down and locking down. Like yesterday, I wrote this intense blog, 2,700 words between meetings here and there. And I do find that my industry fuels that, because I'll hop on another meeting, I'll hop back to my blog, I'll be on my phone, I'll hop back to my blog, I hop on another meeting, I rush out to get kids, I'm back at my blog. So there is this sort of hyper activity that goes on, but it's not healthy and it's not positive. And I'm busy trying to block out time. And like Yoda says, there is no try, there is only do. So I am not trying to block out time. I have blocked out time in my calendar from next week for book writing, because I want to write a book. Do you have any plans on writing a book? You should write a book. You're amazing.
Yeah, so it's cool you say that. So yes, I would like to at some point write a book. Heaven only knows when or how. I mean, it'll happen one day. It's weird. It's like one of my stupid dreams is to have a published book, not because you make any money from it, because you don't, but just, I don't know. I've just always thought, I've always loved reading, and clearly, and English was always my best mark in high school. I just thought to be a published author one day would be cool. But yeah, I don't know. It's just time.
Yeah,
I mean, I could definitely do it. It's just time. But I'll get there.
You definitely don't have time right now.
I will get there at some point. I need a ghostwriter. It's like Ghostception. You need ghosts within ghosts, and then
yes, but there's a problem when you're a good writer. No one will ever write like you, and you'll spend so much time editing it. The best thing is actually
I thought that too,
almost structure them as blogs.
Almost the past 2 weeks, I've started working with a new writer now, and she is. One day when I'm big, I hope I can write half as well as her. She is unbelievable.
She is brilliant. So I know her well.
Yeah,
she is amazing.
And
we're not going to share her name because we don't want anybody else to use her.
No, exactly. So it's good to work with really cool, really talented people, and on the marketing side as well, as you mentioned. Then I've got someone who's also helping me with writing actual like blog content and that kind of stuff, and being able to just brief her with like a few bullet points on, hey, here's what happened in the world of finance yesterday, or here's what this company did, and she spectacularly manages to come up with the imagery for that post and get it back to me, and it's brilliant. So starting to realize you can scale this stuff. What I have learned is you can't teach writing. It's an unteachable skill. You can teach finance, but there is a 0% chance you can teach writing. Someone either can write really well or they can't. So yeah, these are the lessons that you learn.
Interesting. I know, and I have this constant battle with my team. I literally yesterday did a live edit of a blog with the whole writing team, because I wanted them to hear my rationale and my thinking. I think you can become a better writer, and I do think that reading improves writing. I think the reason I can write is because I am a prolific reader. Is that the word? I'm a voracious reader. I read constantly, and I have ever since I was a child. And I think that has also set me up to be a better writer. And also, I think having personality, allowing your personality, allowing humor to come through, really does differentiate as a writer to have a personality. So what's difficult is to write for somebody else. And to let that humor come through. I think that's the main thing that I've always struggled with is
that is tricky. I always think there's two great gifts you can give a child. One is to teach them that books are awesome, and the other one is teach them how to play chess. If you can get those two things right, then school is going to be very easy.
Good. Then I should be okay with that. My kids are better at chess than me. I've never been great at it, but
There we go. There's
they-
no better way to
yeah.
develop your maths and logic than chess.
Good. I'm making all these notes. I've already written down Biswell, and you mentioned in our pre-chat, that you've started playing tennis. And I'm like, okay, tennis. I love tennis. I must do tennis. And I'm going to make another note here. You must see my table; it's just covered in post-it notes. But I do have a system.
You can take tennis off. All I managed to do is stuff up my ankles in the first 3 weeks. Very sad. Tennis was my school or rather was my sport in high school and varsity, and now I probably can't ever play it again, sadly, which is not great.
Really,
it just
never
shows,
again? Can't you?
Yeah, no. Physios had a good look at my ankles, and they were like, "Don't think so." So yeah, not ideal. It's fine.
Swimming.
It's one of those things. Just shows sometimes there's a chapter in your life where you have to take advantage of something, and it may not come back, and that's okay. Just then take advantage of the next thing.
Let it go. Yeah, agreed. Okay, so you've given me some of your top tips for success as a business, and I think that it applies whether small, medium, or large. Let's touch on something that I've always been quite passionate about, which is VC funding. I've always, in our previous podcast, we covered it a bit, where I feel like, and I don't know if it's changed in South Africa since I was last involved on the scene, but VCs in South Africa, they give you R1 million, they take 25%. VCs in America, they'll take 2%, they give you $1 million. Obviously it's totally different. One, Silicon Valley, different budgets, blah blah blah. But I don't like our VC ecosystem in South Africa. I feel like it doesn't put the entrepreneur first, and it doesn't value the entrepreneur as the founder and the engine and the driver. And I don't think that our VCs, and maybe this has changed, I don't think that our VCs really get that the entrepreneur is the driving force behind the concept. That you can't, you can remove the entrepreneur, but it doesn't necessarily succeed. What are your thoughts on that?
So I've obviously been on both sides of the fence, because on one side, I'm a finance professional. I understand the financial models. I understand the returns that they need to make and how hard that is. And now on the other side, of course, I sit as an entrepreneur. So I've never raised any money in the finance growth. I've bootstrapped it from the start. I just thought I left corporate because I don't want to be answerable to someone. As soon as you have another shareholder, you are answerable to someone. So, and that's different to having a co-founder in Biswell or in Magic Markets. I mean, like a financial investor. I do not have one of those. I will never have one. Thankfully, I just don't need it. But, in a lot of cases, people do. And look, the reality is that the problem with South African VC is that our total addressable market in South Africa is really quite limited. So you have a situation where these VCs need to make 10 investments and 8 of them will fail. One of them will do okay. And one of them needs to do spectacularly well to make up for the 8 that failed. And the problem in South Africa is there are still 8 that fail, but the one that does incredibly well is not Facebook or, whatever. It's like a nice business in South Africa. And that's not big enough to make up for the 8 that failed. So that's the challenge for VC in South Africa. They either need to get the fail rate down, which makes them more cautious, which is what you typically see. They don't just throw money at an idea. Or they need to take a bigger stake in the ideas that do work. And that's also what you typically see, as you've alluded to. They don't want 2% of an idea. They want 20 or 30% of an idea. In the US, if you're 2% of Facebook, you're doing just fine. Thank you. And that's really the difference. So VC faces this very structural challenge in South Africa that I don't believe is resolvable, period. I don't think VC in its pure form actually works in South Africa. I think we have a hybrid version thereof. I think people do their best with what they can. But the reality is you just don't have access to finance that will back an idea on a whiteboard and give you millions and millions on end to go off and have a go. Funnily enough, in the US, that is also changing. The easy money is not available anymore. Interest rates are higher. Inflation is higher. VC has been smashed in the last year and a half. It's interesting. I wrote something for Financial Mail, probably, I don't know now, it must be like 9 months ago now, where I actually wrote about exactly this point before anyone was talking about it, which is how the macroeconomics is going to kill VC in the US. And it's happening. It has happened.
Oh, wow.
And it's making it a lot harder to raise money. Very much so. When interest rates are low and money is cheap, then people can have a punt. Then you can take a big chance on someone's business being very valuable 5 years from now. But when that cash is burning every month, then suddenly you start to think, yeah, that's a great idea, but how do you make money with it this year? And then VC looks very different, right?
Yeah. And in a lot of investments, you need a fairly long runway, a couple of years. And then a lot of the time it needs to be extended even more and further and further and further. It's a very long-term investment to make something profitable and succeed in a lot of cases, so it is very much a commitment.
And a lot of the VC stuff, the entrepreneur thinks, okay, cool, I'm going to raise money because I need to earn a salary and I need to live and, I'm so great and I'm so clever and I'm all these things. Reality is actually very different to that. If you are that clever and all of those things, then you're going to need to figure out how to generate that income for yourself while building the business. And it can be done. People just don't, a lot of people just aren't willing to do the hard yards of having the consulting gig alongside building the business. 8 hours a day as an entrepreneur is a complete farce. It's not going to happen. You need to go into this knowing you are going to work all the time for a very long time. And so I always recommend to people that they read Shoe Dog, which is the story of Nike. Because
I love that book.
Shoe Dog is great, right? Because the founder of Nike worked as an accountant for a very long time while selling the shoes. Because that's what he had to do. He was from a time before crazy VC. Nike was started a very long time ago. And I always say to people, that's actually real life. That's what it really looks like. Not, hey, we are 3 kids from Harvard who just raised a fortune in our, seed round. That's rubbish. That is not going to last forever. It's impossible. And so there's some really good lessons from Shoe Dog about don't be shy to, start as a side gig so that your salary is covered while you get the initial months done and you make the initial mistakes. It's risky. And often you have to just, not tell anyone. Don't do anything stupid like compete with your employer. But if it's something unrelated, then, sometimes you got to take a risk. You got to get this thing off the ground without telling anyone and keep it on the down low. It's hard. The stuff is not easy unless you're a trust fund baby, unfortunately.
Well, I think if I was a trust fund baby, it would be so divine because I love hiring people. I would just have so many people hired and it wouldn't have to be profitable, but the big crunch is the balance between what am I charging, what am I making, tracking. It is insane. And that's why, being an entrepreneur is so different to being employed. As if you're employed, you literally look after this one area. An entrepreneur, you carry the whole can. You have to be brilliant at everything. You have to be comfortable with everything. Numbers have never been my forte. And it's something I've had to really just grow into is understand it, building myself these dashboards in Excel. And so, but speaking about that, let me just ask you about some of the top things that you look for in a company when you want to invest. What are signs of a healthy company? How important is the person behind the helm? Do you look at the CEO? Do you look at the management team? What are the success factors, the big metrics that you look at, your big pillars or your big boulders before you go down into more granular stuff?
So it massively depends on where the business is in its life cycle and how established it is. So CEOs make a huge difference in startups. Obviously, it's generally the founder. There are listed companies where the CEO makes very little difference, and there are listed companies where the CEO is absolutely critical, right? So, for example, in Meta at the moment, Mark Zuckerberg is quite clearly doing whatever he wants, like with the metaverse and everything else. He is the key guy there, and if you don't like him, you cannot possibly be a shareholder there. It's just how it is. But if you go and buy a stake in, Sanlam or Old Mutual or whatever the case may be, yes, the CEO obviously makes a difference, but the CEO is not going to wake up tomorrow and bet the farm on some exotic new thing. That's just not how that business works. Then you're looking at growth rates and valuation. So that's why I say it really depends whether you're looking at something that's very, very established and dare I say it, a bit boring and kind of just getting on with it, or something that's a bit more wild. Then management makes a big difference. Within management, in my previous advisory life, we had a client, he said something so profound, stayed with me forever. He said, in any business, there really are only 3 functions. One is business development, the second is operations, and the third is finance. That's it. You can put anything into one of those 3 buckets. And when he invests in something, he always looks at the CEO and figures out, okay, what is this CEO's strength? Ultimately, is he or she really good at sales? Or more of a financial person, your typical scenario where a CA is the founder, or someone who's very strong operationally. He reckons most people can really only be great at 1, good at 2, cannot be great at all 3. It's just impossible. And then he looks for, the blind spot. So for me, for example, I'm good at business development and I'm good at the numbers. I'm extremely horrible at ops. I hate admin, truly hate admin. So my first formal hire in the business would need to be a COO. That's actually what I need. I need a chief get stuff done officer. That's my personal blind spot. Whereas, you know, for you, Dylan, it might be someone very financially strong, because that may not necessarily be, you know, a strength for you. And so the idea is to try and figure out what are my blind spots and then hire to fix them. Because otherwise you just end up hiring your strength and then you're paying someone else's salary to do what you should be doing anyway. So with management, that's
True that.
important. And then the other stuff that obviously makes a business great, you know, it's all the stuff like the product, the unit economics, which is how much you make for each additional product you sell. How well are you managing your expenses? You know, is the cash actually landing in the bank account? It doesn't help if you have all this great stuff and you can't generate cash flow. That's critical, obviously. Growth trajectory, you know, how big can this thing get? And people forget about, you know, the offshoots. Like, what can you add on to your existing brand or business that can actually give you a whole new way to grow versus just carrying on with what you're doing? I always think it's a lot easier to get the first 20% of an economic profit pool than it is to get the last 20% of the one you're already in. In other words, it's easier to grow into something new and get a piece of the action as opposed to being the absolute killer market leader in the one you're in right now. So those offshoots are actually quite valuable from time to time. And then just realistic targets. I think just someone who's sat down and gone, okay, I actually have a realistic view on what my business can achieve. I have a model that shows, you know, what that's going to look like. I understand the numbers and go from there.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Yeah, I recently did a course with Craig Rodney, Agency to Exit, because he basically just taught myself and my business partner, Michael, you know, just some of the big pillars of, you know, running a service-based agency business. And I think that's also one of the things that he highlighted is, you know, CEO, that's me. I need to be focused on business development. And luckily that is my gifting. And operations, definitely not my gifting. So we've got somebody internally who's really great at that, who's busy building all of these structures. And we don't have our own financial director yet. We've got a great supplier that fills that role. But yeah, it is insane trying to get all the knobs and the dials in the right place and moving people into the right place. But I think the main thing that I do is I grow people. I develop people. That's actually, and the byproduct is, we do work as well. Like, we do work for our clients, but my main focus, and I think your main focus, is like helping people make investments, maybe for better financial security, or what is your why? Have you worked that out?
I think it's not even financial security for me. It's just helping people bridge the education gap, because very few people studied finance at varsity. And that is no measure of whether or not you can be a successful entrepreneur or successful with your own money. It's just giving people a chance to learn outside of a formal academic environment. I guess that's really what it comes down to. I'm very passionate about entrepreneurs. I'm very passionate about people who want to grow themselves. You know, I always believe if someone wants to be more than they are today, they need to have access to the tools to allow that. You can never force someone to want to be better than they are today. You know, that's just how it is. You cannot force someone. I've tried before, it doesn't work. But, you know, what you can do is you can give tools to people who want to get up the curve. And that is the why for me, is to supply those tools. And it's just the loveliest thing to see how people, they love the brand. And I don't think there can be any better reward than when you've created something that people love, you know. They really do. My guilty pleasure is when someone recommends me to me without realizing it. Oh, have you read Ghost Mail? I'm like, yeah, no, I do read that every morning. You know, that kind of stuff is just, you know, those little moments keep you going at midnight. Sometimes you need to think about those moments.
Yeah, I love it. You're there for people, and that's the main reason that we exist. I think everybody feels better when they're helping someone. I don't think it's just a certain personality type. I think we're wired to feel fulfilled when you are helping somebody up. And I think more people, not everybody necessarily recognizes that, you know, and yeah. And I think that it actually makes a better world, better place. But it does take, it does mean that you maybe not going to be the most successful, making the most money like other companies out there who are a little bit more cutthroat, or people that are a bit more cutthroat. So, but speaking about that, tell me your ideas about exiting a business. So, you know, I always had this dream, because I've been, you know, indoctrinated through the whole Silicon Valley business model, that you aim for the profitable exit. But recently I've changed my mind, and I'm now aiming just for a high functioning laziness, where I basically hardly have to work. I just pop into the business, it runs, I get my money, I just show up every once in a while, and this is kind of my retirement plan. That's my business. That's my exit plan now for the business. But what are some of your ideas around exiting a business?
So building a business for exit is something different to building it for yourself or for income or whatever the case may be. You have to have succession planning in place. That is the reality. If the business can't exist without you, it's worthless. It's a very hard thing for people to hear. The Finance Ghost equity is worth rand 0 right now, literally 0. Because if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, it's gone. It's worthless. It makes a lovely income, but the business, if I sold it today, is literally worthless. So, building a business for exit is something different. You've got to have something that can stand on its own feet, that will allow you to go off and retire and disappear. And very, very few people actually get that right. We all like to think we're building something of great value. Yes, we're building something of great value to ourselves, but whether or not it's of great value to someone else is a completely different measure. And I mean, there's so much to get into, but I would actually point people who are interested in that. We do these series of webinars on BizVol. We've got so much stuff there. We did a whole webinar just on this, on the importance of actually building something that is separate from you. And I use the analogy of the toddler and the Labrador. There's an article on the BizVol site about that. The toddler is always trying to break away from you, and that's what your business needs to be. It needs to be something that's trying to break away from you as the founder. It's like, let me go. I don't want to hold your hand. I want to run. I want to fall by myself. Whereas the Labrador never leaves you alone. It's there, licking you while you're watching TV and slobbering on your lap. That's the way we treat our businesses, and it's completely wrong. We need to treat them as toddlers. We need to let them run away and fall in the mud and have a little cry and run back to daddy and mommy and be okay. But we don't do it. We treat them as Labradors. And that's why it's so hard to sell a business. So yeah, those are some of the things that people need to think about.
You have been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Finance Ghost. I really appreciate it. I don't know how valuable your time is. And I would highly recommend that people subscribe to your podcast if they want to know more about investments and demystifying finance, and especially with regards investments. So guys, I really want to encourage you, subscribe to Magic Markets. $99, it's free. Basically, it's free. It's like the cost of a cappuccino. And you never know, the price might go up. And if you sign up now, maybe it won't go up for you. So thank you guys so much for watching this show. And yeah, definitely reach us, the Finance Ghost, if you've got any questions. Thank you so much, Finance Ghost, for your time.
Thank you, Dylan. Thank you very much. It was fun.